we went to Mexico for Thanksgiving. We decided to forego the dry turkey and cranky relatives. Sometimes they are. And decided just the three of us to go down close to Ensenada, Mexico, and have a very non traditional Thanksgiving. We had an amazing time. Ensenada is in the Baja Peninsula, and it's only about 4 hours from our house. We had a little bungalow that was right on the beach. And though it was November and a little chilly, we still got to dig in the sand and, you know, pick up shells and have delicious seafood. I'm talking, it was so good. We had a wonderful time. I think Mexico gets a bad rap, and certainly there are lots of issues in Mexico and a lot of crime. But where we were in the Baja Peninsula, it was lovely. The Mexican people were warm and friendly and helpful, and I think this might be our new Thanksgiving tradition. And it got me to thinking about how different people celebrate the holidays. I mean, normally we do spend time with, especially since we live away from our families, we spend Thanksgiving with really dear friends and we have a wonderful time, no doubt. But I don't know. We just, especially since Jeff's parents have passed away, we are looking for different ways and I don't know, sort of reclaim the holiday as something really wonderful. Plus, we don't normally get a family vacation, just the three of us. And this is just kind of perfect timing for us. But anyway, I got to thinking about how a lot of people celebrate the holidays in completely different ways than what you would say would be the standard thing. And here we are in December. Christmas is just a week away from this recording. And I just thought, how do people celebrate Christmas? Or I'm sorry, how do people celebrate the holidays in December? I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and it was a pretty progressive church for being a Southern Baptist church. Kind of came of age in the 1990s in the church. I had a wonderful time and a wonderful experience in general. But I remember in the 90s, that's sort of when the idea of the war on Christmas happened. Especially evangelical Christians became upset when, let's say they went to a store and the cashier said Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. They were kind of led to believe that this so-called woke, or at the time politically correct culture was coming after their ability to celebrate Christmas. And would even, I would hear people weaponize the term Merry Christmas. Let's say they went to a store and they were done with their transaction and the cashier said Happy Holidays and they'd be like, Merry Christmas. It was kind of crazy. And I will say, I did buy into that a good amount. Um, I I don't know. Even now, when someone sends a Christmas card, I'll note if it says Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas. But as I got at, got out of, kind of went into college and started thinking more broadly, and I guess my brain was kind of open to the idea that there are lots of different religions and cultures in the world. And then I joined the army, which is very diverse. I think a lot. I know going in, I was kind of expecting it to be all white men and a few women sprinkled around. Not sure why I got that idea in my head, but I serve with people of all different religions and cultures. I serve with people who weren't even citizens of the United States who were still serving, just a really diverse organization. And then I spent a year in a predominantly Muslim country. And I started, I don't know, it just opened my eyes to the idea that, hey, guess what? There's lots of different people in this world that celebrate, differently. In, I'm just going to focus on the month of December, but generally celebrate different things and in different ways. And so I guess now I'm more open to that idea, but I also didn't educate myself or haven't educated myself on all the different celebrations that there are in December. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I hope you enjoy. Happy holidays. So I want to get into a few religions other than Christianity and how they celebrate in the month of December. I want to start real quick with an overview of the religious breakdown in the United States and then also in the world. This is according to the Gallup poll. United States is predominantly Christian at 68%. 33% of those identify as Protestant, 22% Catholic, and 13% other. 7% are non-Christian, 2% are Jewish, 1% Muslim, 1% Buddhist, and 1% Hindu. And then this was surprising to me, 22% have no religious preference. I thought that was a pretty high number, to be honest. Now, throughout the world, the ratios are different. Now, Christianity is still the number one religion in the world, with 31.1% of the world's population identifying as Christian. Islam comes in at number 2 at 24.9% of the world's population. Number 3 is irreligion, which I'm assuming is no religious preference, and that's 15.6%. Number 4 is Hinduism at 15.2%, and then Buddhism at 6.6%. I was surprised that Judaism wasn't in the top 5. I believe it was number 7, so that I found that interesting. Just a quick little anecdote. I served in Iraq in the Kurdish part and in the Erbil area, which has about 1 million Kurds. Now, I assumed, honestly, that everyone was Muslim in that area. I was really not knowledgeable before I got there, but it was predominantly Muslim, but there was actually a decent amount of people who were Christian. They were called Chaldean Christian, and they had their own little section of the city. They offered more things that are considered forbidden in Islam, like women wore Western clothes, women could drive, and also you could buy alcohol there. Don't ask me how I knew that, but it was really different. Even though Judaism is the number 7 most common, I'm not sure how to say it, but most celebrated religion in the world, in the United States, it's number 2. So in the month of December, the Jewish people celebrate Hanukkah. So I'm going to go through what that is and why they celebrate it. Now, Hanukkah, I used to think it was always in the beginning part of December, but they celebrate or they use a different calendar for these holidays. So it changes. Hanukkah is in the Jewish faith is also called the Festival of Lights. And we'll go through why here in a sec. Now, a little bit of history of why the Jewish people celebrate Hanukkah. So over 2,000 years ago, during the Seleucid Empire in the 2nd century, there was a cruel Greek Syrian leader called Antiochus IV. I practiced that, Epiphanes. He tried to impose his pagan beliefs on the Jewish people, and he basically would force them to worship Zeus and other gods, and that required animal sacrifice. So he made them do that in their own temple, desecrating the temple by slaughtering pigs, which, if you know anything about the Jewish faith, pork is considered unclean and they don't eat it. They don't, involve themselves with it. So this was a real assault to their temple and to their faith. Now, there was a Jewish group of fighters called the Maccabees, and they revolted against Antiochus, and it was a 3-year battle, but they eventually reclaimed Jerusalem. Now, the Maccabees went in there and they purified and rededicated the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. Beit HaMikdash is what they call it. And they, cleaned it up, they blessed it, and they had only 1 jug of oil that was blessed by the high priest. and it was only enough for one night, but they needed it for longer until they could get resupplied with more oil that was blessed. But this oil that was supposed to last only one night lasted 8 nights, and it allowed time for the, more oil to be provided for their temple. So what Hanukkah does is it commemorates the Maccabees and their resilience and the miracle of the light lasting as long as they needed it. And it's a symbol of strength and tenacity and hope. Now, there are several traditions in Hanukkah that sort of represent this. The first one that I think is most recognizable is lighting the menorah. Now, a menorah is a candelabrum with 9 branches. In the middle is what they call the shamash, and it is the candle used to light all the other lights. Now, the menorah is usually placed in a very visible doorway or windowsill to basically symbolize, as they say, spreading of God's light. And you can imagine, considering the Jewish history and how much they have been kind of tried to be conquered, that putting that menorah in a visible place could be seen as an act of rebellion. It's like, this is our faith and this is what we're celebrating. So other things they do, they read scripture, they recite psalms, they sing hymns, and they give to charities, which is kind of in the similar light as Christmas. They eat foods fried in oil, like latkes, which are potato pancakes. The children play with a dreidel, which is like a little, I don't know, a top, like a top toy. And then they give gifts. And I used to be a little jealous of my friends who were Jewish growing up because they got 8 days of gifts. I only got one stinking day, but they got 8 days of gifts, and they were given money, which they call gelt. Families celebrate the gift giving in different ways, but I think that's more traditional. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That is a little brief overview of Hanukkah. Now, I'd like to note that Islam is the next practiced religion in the United States, um, but they don't really have any major celebrations in December. There's some differences according to whether you're Shia or Sunni or other types of Muslims, but generally they don't have any. Those aren't any of their major holidays. So I'm going to move on to Bodhi Day, which is a day that the Buddhists celebrate. Now, this year, it was on December the 8th, and they do use a different calendar, but if you're using the Western calendar, it's December 8th. It's usually between the winter solstice and the Lunar New Year. There are approximately 3 million Buddhists living in the United States and 535 million Buddhists in the world. It's the 4th largest religion in the world. Now, Bodhi Day, what it is, it basically commemorates Gautama Buddha attaining enlightenment 2,600 years ago. Basically, there's a few different, like stories on what he did, but basically he sat under a Bodhi tree and meditated and fasted until he could understand the root of suffering and then how to be free of it. It's basically the day he became Buddha. Now, Bodhi Day is celebrated predominantly in the Mahayana Buddhist traditions, which are including Zen and Pure Land schools. And that's mostly in China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Now, these are some things that they do to celebrate Bodhi Day. It does vary among the Buddhist sects, and kind of the different stories and traditions about what he did. But here are some kind of common things they do. They pray and read scriptures. This one will be familiar, decorate trees with lights or candles, which symbolizes enlightenment. They share special family meals. They do like acts of kindness and charity to reflect Buddha's teachings and also improve karma. They meditate, they chant Buddhist texts, and then some of the foods they use may include tea, cake, rice with milk, and that symbolizes the sustenance during Buddha's final quest for enlightenment. Pretty interesting. All right, so the last religious celebration that I'm going to talk about before going into some others is the Hindu celebration of Pancha Ganapati. That is December 21st through the 25th. And it's often kind of described, I'm sure this is more of a Western way of describing it. It's the Hindu equivalent to Christmas. There are approximately 2.5 million Hindus living in the United States and 1.2 billion worldwide. So basically, this day celebrates Lord Ganesha, which is the elephant-headed deity of culture and new beginnings. And the focus is on making amends and fostering joy and harmony among family, friends, and communities. Now, Hindu children receive gifts for over 5 days. I love that. And so here are some of the traditions they have. Again, it's very similar to how we celebrate Christmas, some of the same traditions. They decorate their home and shrines daily with colorful lights and festoons and cloth. They offer sweets, fruits, and incense to Lord Ganapati, often by children. And then they sing chants and songs. Now, this is observed both as a religious and a secular holiday. I think that Hindu children were kind of feeling left out because here in the month of December, especially if you're living, well, I guess worldwide, but let me speak to the United States specifically, you know, kids are getting presents and there's trees and there's singing and all of that. And they were like, what about us? Well, so that's why they call it the Hindu Christmas. But also a lot of people who don't identify with Christianity at all sort of make this a secular holiday, you know, if they're particularly don't want to celebrate Christmas. So I'm going to take a quick break and then talk about some non-religious ways people celebrate in December. Hope you enjoy learning about some religious celebrations that happen in December. But now I want to go into some non-religious celebrations that happen in the month of December. And the first I'm going to go through is Kwanzaa. Now, I remember Kwanzaa's been around since the late 1960s, but I remember it had to have been late 90s, early 2000s when Kwanzaa became, I guess, more in the awareness of the general population in America. And just like anything new, people were like, what's Kwanzaa and what's this? And this is being shoved down my throat and all of those sort of things. But it is a legitimate way of how African Americans in the United States, some of them celebrate in the month of December. Now, let's go through it. So it's several days. And basically, it is a celebration of African American culture. It was created by an activist by the name of Malana Karenga in 1966 after the Watts police riots, which was in Los Angeles. And it was basically a response against that standard white Christian version of Christmas. It is non-Christian, largely African American, and it originally was meant to be an alternative to Christmas. But a lot of African Americans also wanted to celebrate Christmas. So now it's usually alongside of Christmas. And actually, the activist Karenga actually moderated his beliefs later on for this to be just a way for African Americans to celebrate Christmas, whether they were Christian or not. So for Kwanzaa, there are 7 principles, and I am going to use the English words because I really don't want to butcher the language. So the first is unity, and basically it's to strive for unity in your family, in your community, in your nation, and within your race. Number 2 is self-determination. It is to basically define and name ourselves, but also speak for ourselves. Number 3, collective work and responsibility. And this is to build the community and maintain the community together and with each other, basically solve the community's problems together. The next is cooperative economics. Similar to the community, it's to build and maintain our own stores, our own businesses, and support each other for success. All right, next is purpose. And this is basically to adopt a vocation that develops the community and has a greater purpose. Number 6 is creativity. So basically, to use our ideas to create a community that's better than when we moved in or when we, first came into the community. And then number 7 is faith. And this is not a religious faith. It is basically um, a belief with all of your hearts, to kind of a belief in your parents, in your community, in your leaders, and then in the righteousness of your struggle. So there are some standard practices of Kwanzaa. It basically involves families decorating their households with art and colorful African cloth, and then also provide fresh fruits, and then women wear kaftans. And children, I noticed this with all of the ceremonies, whether religious or the celebrations, whether religious or not, is that children are always involved. And children in these ceremonies give respect. They're involved to give respect and gratitude to their ancestors. And these include drumming and music, drinking out of a common chalice, and then reading of the African pledge and principles of Blackness. Now, if you know someone who celebrates Kwanzaa, you can respect them, and the greeting for each day, which is Habari Gani, and that is Swahili for how are you? Now, on the 6th day of Kwanzaa, they have a feast of faith, or what they call Karamu ya Imani. And Kwanzaa is mostly celebrated in the United States, but they also celebrate it a lot in Jamaica, France, Canada, and Brazil. So that is a little bit about Kwanzaa. The reason there are so many celebrations in December is because it is the winter solstice. And that throughout the all of humanity, winter solstice is a pivotal moment in the year. The first kind of category about sort of associated with winter solstice is Yule. Now, Yule basically originated over 1500 years ago. And it is, of course, a midwinter festival. And it was originally celebrated by the Germanic pagans. Basically, the reason the winter solstice is so important is it was a way to sort of combat the dark and cold. Because I don't know if any of you have ever lived in a very cold environment, northern environment. Once you hit late December, it's a struggle. We lived in northern New York for 4 years when I was in the Army, basically really close to the Canadian border, up close to Ontario. And it was dark by 4 o'clock. It was, I mean, at this time right now, that part of the country, I think they got like 6 to 7 feet of snow within a matter of days. It's hard, it's depressing, it's cold. You're ready for winter to be over, and it's still got months to go. So Yule was a way to break up the depression of the winter. And basically, that's kind of where it started. All right. Now, these pagan communities were eventually invaded by Christians in the 6th and 7th centuries. And they realized that, I don't know if this is out of goodwill or what, but they realized that, okay, maybe we'll let the pagans celebrate a few things that they like to do as we take over and try to convert them to Christianity by force. So some of these things, basically, like the Christmas tree lighting, the giving of presents, like certain things that they do that Christians do now were pagan traditions, and they just kind of merged. Okay. Now, currently, so the term Yule is in language like English, Finnish, and Scandinavian, and it is a way to describe Christmas and other winter holiday festivals. So it's kind of morphed into a general term for celebrating at Christmas. And there are some neo-pagan, as they call it, movements that celebrate Yule instead of Christmas. Again, as kind of a way of saying, I don't really identify with Christmas and what kind of Christianity, but I want to celebrate something in the winter, and I'm going to go to the roots of Yule. Now, some of these traditions might sound familiar. They light a Yule log, and they have a certain way of singing. And like I said, there's a lot of traditions that we've adopted into Christianity that were actually considered pagan way back when. I think that's kind of interesting. All right, so like I said, the winter solstice is a big deal, and it is the root of a lot of December celebrations. And there's three in particular that are pretty big that, again, are not Christian. There's the Donji festival, which is East Asian Chinese. There is the Shabi Yalda, which is Iranian or Persian. And then there's the Inti Raimi, which is in the southern hemisphere, so not cold. In Andean cultures, that's their summer solstice. So, all right. Again, just cover a few more things with Yule that maybe might sound familiar if you celebrate Christmas. They go caroling. They burn the Yule log. They, have a bonfire, lights. There's a lot of lights and that sort of thing, and lots of different traditions throughout the world. They kiss under the mistletoe, exchange gifts with loved ones. They celebrate Kris Kringle, a German pagan god. I could do a whole other podcast episode about Santa Claus and where that idea came from. But honestly, since I am Santa Claus in this house, I don't want to talk about him. But there are lots of different roots of sort of like a patron saint of giving and goodwill. And Kris Kringle is one. And of course, they bake cookies and other sweet treats. They actually use traditional flavors like caraway, anise, dried fruits, and nuts, which sounds like fruitcake. So we have them to blame for that. I actually like fruitcake. All right, so those are some of the non-religious and winter solstice celebrations in December. I hope you've enjoyed this topic during the holidays, kind of light. Um, you know, what I really find interesting is that many cultures and religions share very similar ways of celebrating, even if they're celebrating completely different things. They give gifts, they sing songs, they have big family meals, they decorate their homes for Christmas. Some of my favorite things that we do, I really enjoy singing badly to Christmas music. We usually get the Google, hey, Google, play whatever Christmas songs. I really enjoy that. We watch a lot of Christmas movies. Favorites in our home are Home Alone, which Devin actually listened to on the way to Mexico in our car. He watched all of Home Alone. Christmas Vacation, of course. I really love Love Actually. Love that movie, but I usually have to watch it by myself because Devin and it's not appropriate for Devin, and Jeff, he likes it okay. And we usually really like to watch A Christmas Carol also. I do like, once I get my Christmas shopping done, I enjoy looking at the lights. We have some really neat, big light productions here in our town. So we like to do that. All right. Now, I guess some of these like intersections of culture and ways of celebrating kind of do come from a Christian force. It's usually a Christian force, sorry. When it comes to this, kind of going into a country, converting everyone, and then going, oh, okay, that's sort of a cool tradition. Let's do that. So it's kind of interesting how all these different conquered cultures influence their invaders. Of course, also, it's not just about war. It's, trade and like human migration. I'm sure there are anthropologists who have done all kinds of research on this, but I just think it's really interesting. And I hope whatever you're celebrating here in the month of December, I hope it is joyous and prosperous. And as usual, I will see you next time.